She proceeded to rip Genevieve's eyes out, telling Leah, who'd rushed down from the attic upon hearing the commotion, to do the same to Leonie. Hello there and welcome, I hope you're doing well. My name is Gabby and in today's video we will be going through the much older and unusual case of the Papin sisters. If you enjoy true crime, consider subscribing to the channel. I release new videos every Monday and Friday, but for now let's get into the video. The Lancelins, Renee, Leonie and their daughter Genevieve were a wealthy, respected French family. Renee was a retired solicitor and the family enjoyed the sort of lifestyle available to those of their level of means in the 1930s Le Mans, France. Also living in the Lancelins' two-storey townhouse were the family's maids, a pair of sisters, Christine and Leah Papin. According to those who knew the family, the manner in which the Papins carried out their duties was excellent. So much so that the Lancelins were the envy of many other upper-class families in Le Mans for having such dedicated and hard-working employees. However, under the surface, all was not well. While the Lancelins paid the sisters the standard wages for domestic servants in that period and provided them with comfortable accommodations, their relationship with them was strange. Renee hadn't spoken to the sisters or they to him once in the 7 years he'd employed them, and even his wife Leonie, who was primarily responsible for telling the sisters what to do, only communicated with them via written notes. Additionally, despite the quality of the sisters' work, Leonie regularly carried out white glove tests to ensure that the dusting of the furniture was up to her standards. The relationship between the two sisters was likewise odd. Despite them rarely talking to one another, it was clear that they were close to the point of being dependent on each other. Having taken the job largely because it allowed them to stay together and spending the majority of their free time in their shared bedroom, rarely going out except to go to church or run errands for the family. Christine, the older of the two, was prone to being erratic, while her younger sister Leah didn't share that problem. She was overly passive and obedient, always unquestionably following her sister's lead. It isn't surprising that the Papin sisters weren't exactly normal. Their childhood was dysfunctional in the extreme. The relationship between their parents, an alcoholic father and a severely depressed mother, had been hostile before they were born and only got worse afterwards. Christine was sent to live with an aunt shortly after birth and later spent some time in a Catholic orphanage. Leah, quiet and nervous and of limited intelligence from growing up in a household perpetually at war, was sent to live with an uncle. The periods in which they and their older sister Amelia lived with their parents were filled with chaotic arguments and verbal, physical and sexual abuse. Their father was accused of raping Amelia, who later became a nun, and their mother finally sought a divorce. Her main motivation was jealousy regarding the attention her husband was showing towards their daughters. Such a background might partly explain what happened on the evening of the 2nd of February 1933. That day it was dark and raining heavily. The sisters were alone in the house. Renee was out playing cards and Leonie and Genevieve had gone on a shopping trip. As they planned to go straight to the home of Leonie's brother for dinner, the Papin sisters didn't expect them to be back until late that evening. According to their later testimony, one of the sisters plugged in an iron that had been newly repaired, only for it to cause a fuse to blow in the house. As they weren't expecting their employers to return until late, they decided to leave repairing it until the following morning. However, Leonie and Genevieve returned unexpectedly, and according to Christine, Leonie responded to the problem with the iron and the blown fuse by flying into a wild rage. Christine's response to that was to smash a pewter jug on Leonie's head. Genevieve then tried to come to the defense of her mother, causing Christine to redirect her attack towards her, Christine allegedly shouting, "I'm going to massacre them." She proceeded to rip Genevieve's eyes out, telling Leah, who'd rushed down from the attic upon hearing the commotion, to do the same to Leonie. Leah, as unthinkingly obedient as always, did as she was told. The sisters then collected a hammer, a knife, and a pewter pot and proceeded to beat their blinded and helpless victims to death. They then stabbed and cut them beyond the point of recognition, carving up the victims' faces, chest, thighs, buttocks, and genitalia. As a final gruesome touch, they dabbed Leonie's body with her daughter's menstrual blood. The attack lasted 2 hours before finally coming to an end. Meanwhile, René had become concerned when his family didn't arrive at his brother-in-law's house and returned home with a friend. Upon doing so, they found every door locked and the house in darkness. René then contacted the police, who broke into the house and found first the mutilated corpses of Leonie and Genevieve on the floor, and then the sisters in the bed together in their room, naked. Christine and Leah immediately confessed to the crime, calmly and without trace of remorse, and claimed that it had been in self-defense. As Leah told the police, it was her or us. From now on, I am deaf and dumb. After their arrest, the sisters were imprisoned separately. Christine soon proved to be unable to cope with being apart from Leah, becoming extremely distressed and on one occasion having to be restrained and put in a straitjacket because she tried to claw her own eyes out. When allowed to see Leah at one point, she threw herself into her younger sister's arms, and the following conversation between them indicated that they'd had a sexual relationship prior to being arrested, which would fit with how they were found. Meanwhile, Leah, while being more passive and seemingly the weaker of the two, proved herself to be far more resilient than Christine and coped with the separation relatively well. The gruesome nature of the crime ensured that the case attracted a great deal of attention from outside Le Mans, including from a number of intellectuals of the era who claimed that the murders were a manifestation of the struggle between the upper and lower classes, with Christine and Leah having struck back against their mean-spirited masters. The defendants, meanwhile, argued that the sisters were temporarily insane during the attacks, citing their parents along with a cousin who died in an asylum, and an uncle who committed suicide, and a grandfather who'd been prone to violent outbursts, as proof that they had a hereditary predisposition towards insanity. The courts, however, ruled that Christine and Leah were sane enough to stand trial. During the trial, it was concluded that Christine had been the driving force behind the murders, which had been motivated by a petty feud between her and Leonie Lancelin. It was also concluded that Leah was completely subservient to her older sister, to the point that her personality was nothing more than an extension of Christine's with little will of her own. Therefore, she couldn't be considered to be more than an accomplice to the crime. Christine and Leah Papin were both found guilty of murder, Christine being sentenced to execution by guillotine, while Leah, due to being considered a mere accomplice, was given the much lighter sentence of 10 years imprisonment with hard labour. While awaiting execution, Christine's already questionable mental health went downhill without Leah. Her sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, and she was eventually transferred to a mental hospital, but she kept starving herself until she finally died in 1937. Leah continued to be the more resilient of the two. She served 8 years of her sentence before being released early for good behaviour, then went on to live with her mother under a different name and sank into obscurity. It is uncertain when she died, but it could have been as late as 2001, when she would have been about 90 years of age, although she'd suffered a stroke well before then and had been partly paralysed as a result. So that was the Papin sisters. Quite a strange story and definitely an unnatural relationship between the two, with Christine being the worst of them. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It'll be very much appreciated. But until I see you again, please be safe, be well, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.